So here we are, Daniel, at the start of what a lot of people consider to be what a lot of people consider to be the start of the quiet route, and it's also probably the most problematic parts. As you can see, with all these cars swirling around, it's not the best for cyclists. Do you come this way?
I missed this bit out. I normally join slightly further down, but very familiar with this little junction. I think it's been a problem for a very long time. I mean, what's going to happen with this, Scott?
So the layout, work has just started, as we've seen this morning behind us, and it's going to work its way along Braidburn Terrace. So the layout of this junction is essentially how it's going to be once those permanent changes are made. But the council officers say and believe that once we've got permanent curbs here rather than these rubber things, drivers will deal with the situation differently and it will feel a lot better, and obviously we'll get rid of this temporary crossing and there'll be a permanent one here instead. So it'll look better, and officers believe that drivers are interact with it in a better way. I normally come down Braid Road and it looks a lot different when you're coming down Braid Road.
It will look better. I have to say it's been pretty busy while we've just been talking here.
Yeah.
I need to keep an eye on that. Oh. So Scott, I mean, the main reason we met up this morning was because the consultation on the quiet route is just about to open, or is it open today? Is that right?
It should hopefully start at some point today. So when these changes were made to the quiet route, and and Braid Road was reopened to two-way traffic, there's been some knock-on impacts in terms of how traffic moves through the area.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of drivers working through the area to try to get to wherever it is they want to get to,
yes.
kind of use the area as a shortcut. And so quite a lot of residents have been complaining about the number of vehicles that are going down streets which used to be quiet, and also, more importantly, their speed.
Yes.
So the consultation really is looking at a number of different ways of addressing that, whilst still protecting cyclists just as much as the original intention was. I think we're going to go on this one.
Yeah,
here?
Let's go that way. Look, and I think, I mean, you mentioned it there, Scott. I mean, because it is quite important, I think, to note that there are issues around here, but some of these issues are very long-standing. There's been rat running around some of these streets for as long as I can remember, and likewise, I think one of probably the very first issues that came into me when I was first elected was the issue of speeding on Braid Road, and I think it's really important not to lose sight of those issues as we think about what the different plans are. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I think obviously my ward's just up the hill, and I would say that the one constant in all this, going from pre-COVID through the closure of Braid Road, the reopening of it, right to now, has been speeding traffic on Braid Road, particularly at the top section as you get towards Fairmile Head. And I know pre-COVID there was a plan to deal with that, but obviously, if anything, the situation's getting worse actually. Yeah. So I think it's time the council did move on that, to be honest. And hopefully we will be prioritising what are called speedy schemes, so that's road safety schemes that are focused on speed and traffic in the coming months. So hopefully that will be somewhere on that list.
And so, what are I think there are three options, is that right, in the consultation regarding the quiet route?
Yes, so essentially there's a different version of what we have just now. So just moving the filters around to make it even harder for traffic to get through the area. Another option is basically to remove the vast majority of the filters and blocks, but create a protected cycle route through the area for people, so fully segregated for cyclists.
Yeah.
And then, so that's the first and third option. And the second option, remember, says right, it's a hybrid of the two. So some filters, etc., but still that protected cycle route through the area for people. Because I think one of the challenges in the area, and I think the council's data shows this, is whilst we do have this quiet route, which I think we've followed, I'm not quite sure when I'm following it or not, is a lot of cyclists still stick to the kind of main route through the development down. Is it Braid Avenue?
Yeah.
And along Hermitage Drive. So a lot of cyclists are still sticking to that, despite the quiet route. So two of the options have segregated cycling on those routes.
Well, and you're talking about the modal filters, and I'll be very frank, I hate that bit of terminology because I don't think most people know what it means. I think round here, if you're not familiar with the area, right now the configuration causes a lot of confusion and therefore frustration. But I mean, if you're in a car and you hit it, I mean, what do the different options do about that? Do they make it kind of a little bit more intuitive to know what you're supposed to do?
Well, I think one of the issues that people complain about is the point I made just a few minutes ago about people being not quite sure where the quiet route is often, and also drivers, I guess, not being clear what the routes through the area are. So all the options come with better what's called wayfinding, which is, I guess, is just signage, so that people know where they are and perhaps where they want to get to. I've not seen the detail of that, but that's been the promise.
Can we change the terminology, Scott?
Well,
call it signage and call them planters rather than modal
that's
filters.
The thing is, I mean, I had a lady contact me recently, and she wasn't the biggest fan of one of the modal filters, and she said, Scott, I've looked at the plan, and it said there should be a modal filter in this road, but all there is a great big ugly planter. And so I had to explain to her that the planter was a modal filter. And so I think she was quietly disappointed.
Actually, I'm not averse to the planters. I think they can look really good, but I think sometimes we just need to use plainer language. Coming back to the plans, so that's three options. How long will the consultation be open for?
Oh, you put me on the spot. I think 22nd of October.
Well, we can figure that out and maybe put some text across the bottom of the screen.
I'm pretty sure it's the 22nd, and then I think it's going to report back to the Transport Committee in February. So it's important to remember that is just the start. That'll be out of this consultation. Changes may or may not be made. I expect they will be made, and then that'll be the starting point for the next phase of the ETRO. I mean, a few months ago, I did walk around the area with one of the local councillors, and I spoke to quite a few residents. None were happy with what we've got just now. None wanted to go back to what it was pre-COVID, and none wanted Braid Road closed again. So,
look, that comes back to what I was just saying. Is that there's been long-standing issues, and it does sound like the three options have some, from essentially going back to the way things were, but with cycle lanes through to extending. So that, I mean, I guess what's really important is for people to comment on what elements and aspects they like, and actually what they want the direction of travel to be, excuse the pun, and that's what the consultation is for.
So the way we're to rank the options, and the idea is that by using ranking, we can figure out which is the most favoured. So
and you'll have an ability to comment on.
Oh yes. So it's not the case that the one with 34% of the vote out of the three would win, if that's the word.
Yeah.
There'll be some kind of, almost like the STV system, some kind of transfer of preferences, just to understand what the issues are and what people might want to see. I think the one thing I'm disappointed with, Daniel, is that I'd really hoped there was time to actually work with the residents so they could produce their own option that went into the consultation, but it turned out that wasn't possible.
So, and once the results in, what are the plans to sort of present findings and discuss the findings. So I think it's one thing to have a conversation. Sometimes I think people get a bit frustrated.
So that'll come to so we spoke to officers and they say that all the options available meet the criteria of, protecting the route through the area for walking and cycling. So all of them are viable. We had a workshop which the councillors from Morningside and Fairmont Head were able to attend and comment. It's pretty clear that each councillor maybe has their favourite and least favourite option, but I think nobody argued that any of the options on the table weren't viable, as sort of meeting those aims. So we really just have to wait for the consultation to come back.
Yeah.
I don't want to predict too much about what we're going to do with the consultation results because we've not seen them yet.
Okay.
And also I'm very wary that these consultations are often open to groups encouraging people to respond in a certain way, so we'll have to be mindful of that as well. But certainly I'm very aware there's a lot of bad feeling about the way, the way that the sort of political management of this in the past, and the way that people feel their voice hasn't been heard. So there's a real opportunity here, Daniel, to rebuild some trust, I think, with that community.
Well, I think that's a really important point, because I think what people get very tired of when they feel things are a bit of a fait accompli and there's no ability to influence the sort of the final decision, the final result, the final plan. So hopefully there'll be an opportunity once the results come back to have a bit of an analysis and discussion about that in some manner or means with the people that it will affect most directly who live in and around the route.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's really good.
So the whole situation's proved intractable because of the way it evolved. So I really do hope this is a way of moving it forward.
Because I should put my cards on the table. I use this route every day I go into Parliament.
And you can see it's well used.
It is well used.
Yeah.
And more importantly, I think we need separate, segregated cycle routes, but in a city like Edinburgh, where a lot of even the main roads are quite narrow, that's difficult to achieve on main roads. So using back streets and back roads, residential roads, to give cyclists, I think, direct routes, I think is quite a good way to do it. And actually, right now we're on Canaan Lane, which I think this has been a great bit of the quiet route. Actually, I don't think this has really impacted people and gives cyclists a really great route up. So,
yeah, and it used to be intolerable before because it's a longish straight section with no real properties fronting onto it. There was a real issue with speed in here, I think. So as a cyclist, it was never that pleasant. Now it is what it is, I guess. So the quiet routes are good, and they are an important part of what we do in terms of the cycling network. But the one issue that we can have with them. So the one issue we can have with them is the safety of people at night time when it's dark.
Well,
so we have to make sure they're well lit for starters, I think.
Well lit.
Yeah, so I think the council's much more aware of that as an issue now, and it is something they look at when they're considering any of the changes we're making around transport is sort of nighttime safety.
So the other thing, certainly I would say, I don't know if you'd agree with, but and at the risk of upsetting everyone,
please do.
I like having these sorts of routes. They make me feel much safer when I'm on my bike. But I'm also like driving my car. I'll just stop for the bin lorry. And I do think we need to maintain a balance. I think we should be encouraging people not to use their cars for kind of short hops across the city, but by the same token, I don't think we should make it impossible to use your car either. I don't know kind of where your sort of mindset is on these sorts of issues.
So we do, in the city, we do have a commitment to reduce car use, not car ownership, reduce car use by 30% by 2030.
I'll let you scoot past, Scott.
So we do have that. We do have a commitment to reduce car use by 2030, and you know, improving walking and cycling is a key part of that.
But you need to. I mean, critically, that needs to be. You also need to maintain your ability for people to get across town. But I think it's about rebalance.
Yes,
to my mind, rather than.
So we'll make walking and cycling easier.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm due to meet the MD of Lothian buses this morning. So something I'm really passionate about is getting more people using the bus, making that more convenient, etc. And the good news is if people do make that modal shift to other modes, more sustainable modes of transport, it means for people who have to drive, and particularly people who are moving goods and services around the city, or perhaps people who have got mobility problems, it should mean there's more space on the road for them, and so they can get around as well.
And actually, the data backs this up. I was just looking at some data the other day showing Edinburgh is way ahead of just about every other UK city apart from London in terms of public transport usage. So there's actually, you know, we're heading in the right direction on that, you know, and I think we need to remember actually where people do use the buses in this city, you know, and I think if that's what people want to do, we should be ensuring that people have the option to do so.
Yeah, and the great thing about buses in Edinburgh is that everybody uses them. In other towns and cities, they're seen as being something, you know.
Yeah, certain.
Yeah, for maybe people on lower incomes, etc. But in Edinburgh, everyone's there, you know, and it's not just about income and background as well. And also Lothian won an award this year for accessibility of their services too. So it's great when you go on the bus and you see a complete cross-section of society, well, Edinburgh society, on them. Even MSPs sometimes, Daniel.
What?
Even MSPs
sure?
sometimes, yeah.
No, I like using the bus. I actually have to say I prefer using my bike, although I think that also brings me to another point. I think I do like using my bike. I find it, especially for getting around the constituency or nipping in for meetings, and certainly getting to and from Parliament, I find it really convenient and quick. But I also recognise it's not going to be for everyone. I don't think necessarily absolutely everyone, whether you've got mobility issues or where you're located. So this is another point where I think, we need those blend of options.
Yeah, and so up in my ward in Fairmile Head, we can discuss with people, perhaps using their car less and using the bus more, particularly when they're coming to the city centre. And people, I think, would make that jump if they were sure it was reliable, etc. But I think getting people from using their car to cycling, and particularly into the city centre, is a much bigger step.
And I totally understand that.
It's about choice, I think.
It is about choice.
And cars not parking on WL lines.
Yeah, I was about to say, I half wondered whether we should point out that the scooter back there was on the road and shouldn't have been.
Again.
How long? Actually, I should ask you, how long?
So this is a key part of the Quite Route here, and it's a part that we made the workshop were sure to protect, because it's actually quite an important part of the scheme for kids accessing the school. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's quite right. No, I agree, and I think protecting schools, and this has created a really nice area, and actually one of the things I always like doing if I'm passing here at pick-up time, the parents all gathering here, and I don't think this is actually inconvenient. This was a bit of a rat run, and I don't think it's actually caused any issues preventing cars coming through.
Thank you.
No, but I was just going to say, I was just really going to ask you more generally. I mean, how long have you been using your bike to get around, and what sort of prompted you to start cycling, or is it something you've always done?
Hi, Ewan. Fine yourself?
Hello. I'm good, thank you. Oh, I think we're heading off. Oh, are you still? Yeah, it's still working.
Yeah, it's all okay. So I can't remember what we were talking about before.
I had just asked you about your cycling habits.
Oh, that was it. Yeah, yeah. So let's do that, right?
Yeah, so I think I was asking you about when you started cycling and what prompted
Yeah,
that.
yeah, so we got interrupted there, everyone, just to briefly speak to a parent from
Indeed.
The school
about the Quiet Route.
About the Quiet Route, actually, and I was pleased to see he was already aware the consultation is going to start soon, hopefully later today. So, I mean, I started cycling, obviously, as a kid, and I always enjoyed it. But then when I went to university, I stopped. Like a lot of people, I think.
Yeah.
And then when I was doing my PhD, Audrey, who's now my wife, said that she was going to get a bike. And I managed to my great guilt, I managed to talk her out of it by saying it was where would we keep it? It was just going to make a mess of the flat, and would she ever really use it? And so she's never quite let me forget that. And then not soon after that, I started my PhD, and I shared an office with a chap that had a bike, and I thought I'll give this a go. And that's been it. So that was probably 1992.
Oh, so that's
I
long-term
restarted
thing.
Around that time. So since then, I probably cycle, on average, maybe 3,000 kilometres a year. I mean, back then, I think I was probably doing maybe 5,000, something like that.
Okay.
Cycled, over quite a bit of Europe as well. How about yourself?
I mean, a bit like you. Obviously, cycled a lot as I was a kid. Definitely stopped when I was a student. I moved away for a lot of my 20s. When I came back to Edinburgh, I sort of cycled a bit. But then actually for me, I'm a bit of a lockdown convert. Like a lot of people, I started thinking about, well, how do I want to get back? And actually, especially, there was a point where we were going in and out of Parliament a lot, and I wasn't actually at that point, just a little bit concerned about, using the bus, or just not wanting to minimise that in terms of, just because of the public health issues at the time. And I thought, well, maybe a bike's the way to, because I wasn't feeling very happy about using my car to go in and out. And
for you as well, I mean, from Morningside, it must be way quicker cycling than using the bus.
It is much quicker than the bus, and actually it's about the same length of time as by car. And actually the interesting thing was I was a little bit concerned, because I mean I got this bike through Cycle to Work, which is a really good way of doing that, and a little bit concerned about whether or not I'd have a phase of initial enthusiasm and then it would fall by the wayside. But I mean the thing for me is, since I got it, what was it, 2-3 years ago now, been carrying on going right the way through the winter, I actually almost, and I actually almost quite like the sort of the cycling through the wind and rain in the winter months, and it's just, for me, it's just it's just slightly less than 20 minutes normally for me to get in, and that's a really good length of journey time. It's not a bird's in.
It's the bad weather that makes the good weather good, actually, if you know what I mean, when it comes to cycling. Yeah. All you really need is a decent jacket and a good pair of gloves, I think, and you can...
Oh, gloves are definitely... I've got some
you can cope with
good insulated gloves for the winter.
The only thing I'm always nervous... I think I fell off my bike a few times, and until recently I could say that every time it was due to ice or frost.
Yeah.
So I still get very nervous.
I
when
get
I
very
see
nervous.
Frost,
so I came off my bike. Was it in a year or two ago, and it was with the ice. It was the first winter I was cycling.
Once your front wheel hits it, that's it. You're gone.
I mean, well, that.
The
So
thing
you're
is,
saying that the mobility plan is coming in, and
so we should. So in terms of walking and cycling in the city, the consultation on the city mobility plan should come back to committee soon. I've seen some early indications of the results, and hopefully that should trigger investment in walking and cycling, and also expansion of public transport as well. It's part of that drive really to cut congestion, cut car miles.
Will that all be upgrades, or will that be a bit of improvement? I mean, I would.
so through those plans, every household in the city, more or less, will be within 400 metres of a cycle route.
Okay.
But it's it's something that will take several years to deliver, and it is relying on the Scottish Government delivering that additional active travel funding.
Yes.
And so have you seen the report that came out last week from Transport Scotland? So it's gently raising concerns about how that's been delivered. But I think all the indicators are that money will come through. So it's about making the most of that. And a big part of the Active Travel Action Plan, and right at the front of it actually, is walking. About dropping curbs on an industrial scale right across the city where it's needed, making it easier for people to walk to bus stops.
Yes.
Making sure bus stops are well lit, making sure people have information available to they need to get the bus, etc. And and I'm going to speak to Lothian buses this morning, and the thing they always remind me is that every bus journey starts and ends with either walking or wheeling. So they're actually key to us improving active transport as well in the city.
And on this, I think it'd be remiss of me not to ask you the blunt question. So a lot of when you say people talk about that sort of thing, will say, well, look, you just need to put things like the potholes right and get road marking sorted. I mean, where does that fit in terms of that really basic maintenance as well as the sort of investment in active travel?
So there's two responses to that. The first is that by and large the active travel spending the council delivers is ring-fence money from the Scottish Government, which can only be spent on that.
Okay.
So this is happening just now. So we're doing a road safety scheme in Cllr just now. Improvements, particularly around the school there, and people are rightly raising concerns about potholes, etc. But this money, so it's not that we're robbing the pothole budget to do these road safety schemes. The money comes ring-fenced from the Scottish Government. On road condition, I've been clear since I became Transport Convener that it's not good enough in Edinburgh.
No.
And the cuts in recent years are going to take us some time to recover from. This year we've had one of the biggest increases in road condition funding in the city, an extra £11 million this year. Next week, Transport Committee will be looking at the projections for how road conditions are going to deteriorate and what it will take to stop that. And the reason I'm publishing that report, or the council's publishing that report, but it was something I asked for, is try to depoliticise road conditions. So basically councillors will know what's needed to maintain or improve road condition, and if they choose to go below that in the budget, that is their decision, but they do so knowingly. Whereas in the past, the numbers have almost been picked out the sky.
Yeah.
So it's about informing that debate.
Because it strikes me that we sort of have these flurries, and then I worry that we then don't spend the money to actually maintain, and then they deteriorate until your point where you need another flurry to fix the really terrible bits.
Officers were really clear, but the additional £11 million we gave them this year, especially they're going to have to work really hard to spend it all. And it was only a 1 year surge. So what they need is a plan, and for councillors to deliver that, or support that plan's delivery.
Yeah.
So that section of road there is probably the worst part of my commute into the city.
It's not nice.
It's very short,
road
but it's extremely unpleasant.
It's always unpleasant. I'd agree with that.
But there is works planned for here, taking it right up to the mound.
And are there any plans to try and fix? I mean, it strikes me one of the reasons our roads are quite often in a bad state, is this level of patching we have because of utilities works and things like that. Are there any plans to try and improve that situation, or are there other reasons why? I mean, you're a civil engineer by training and profession. Yeah. I mean, what can we do to actually?
So more staff were appointed to that team last year to just manage utilities generally in the city. But the level of utility works and construction works, as we can see ahead in the city, it's absolutely incredible. We will publish a report in December, which talks about how the different utility companies are performing, and which of them are not meeting the standard we would expect. And we did the same last year, of course.
Indeed, I actually was speaking to one utility company that just fired their contractor. I won't say which, because they weren't meeting standards, which was a good thing to hear actually. But it does strike me, it's the difference between this country and other countries. So you see, I think we clearly have a different approach to the way we manage these things. And you see the damage around the seams where the patches have gone in.
So a lot of it's to do with the powers that the council has. More about how we manage utility works generally, rather, because we do have the power to obviously inspect and ask them to make it good, and we'll publish the stats on that in December. But I think more generally about how we manage utilities in the city and the impact of on congestion. The council really does need more powers to deal with that. So
what powers specifically? That sounds like my department that you're talking about.
So I'm glad you asked that question. So in England they use something called lane rental. So if a utility company wants to open the road, they pay a daily rate for it.
Yeah.
So that encourages them to work smarter and also work faster.
And we don't have that in Scotland?
No, it's used widely in England. And so we were speaking about this at the Transport Committee recently, and City Fibre got in touch to say they would support it. Absolutely. Well, not quite absolutely, but they said they would support it. So it tells you utility companies wants this. The council wants it. So what's the barrier? So maybe one for you to figure out once you get down the road.
I might put in some questions about that. Actually, genuinely, I will. I'll do that the moment I get in my desk. I'll just come into City Chambers with you.
I wrote a blog on it a couple of weeks ago. I'll send a link to you.
Okay. Well, that's taken a bit longer than I normally expect.
Sorry. bit longer than usual. I'm so slight.
Too much chat.
I've not got electrical power, that's the thing.
I wasn't really using it. So. But no, look, well, thank you for doing that. I think that's been quite useful, and hopefully there's answers there to questions that people would have. And I think, you know, I think we were being pretty unspun there as well. I mean, because I think there's a bit of, I just think there needs to be a bit of frankness, and I think most people want to see improvements, and I think sometimes these things just get really polarised in a way that they don't need to.
Yeah, I mean, and that is the problem with the Quiet Route, because of the way it was founded. There is a lot of tension in the community around that, and I'm really hopeful that consultation helps resolve that. Another tension, of course, is the one you touched on about, you know, getting the basics right, so road condition versus, you know, investment in these walking and cycling schemes, as important as they are. And you know, and I get that it can be really frustrating, because, as you know, Edinburgh is Scotland's worst funded council. And that does it
literally at the bottom of the league
so
table.
that impacts on road conditions.
And that's a Scottish Government decision, let's just be clear, because
Absolutely.
only, I think about 15% of council funding comes from council tax, the rest all comes from direct grant from the Scottish Government, and we have the lowest per capita funding in Edinburgh of all.
There's also the rates thing, but that goes to the
That's quite a complicated thing in and of itself.
But and our second biggest income stream is parking revenue. You know, so there's the opportunities for councils to raise money are limited. We do have workplace parking levy powers, possibly, which we're going to discuss.
Controversial.
Yes, and we'll be discussing that next week. And I do have real concerns about that, and I know you do as well. And also, congestion charge is another option. But it's hard for us to press the congestion charging button until we've got those public transport links right with surrounding local authorities. Otherwise, it just really damages the economy.
Well,
so
I mean, I think,
John, stick there needed. You know,
and that touched on another thing is I think we need a better way for all the local authorities across the Lothians to work together, because ultimately this is one big region, you know, where all the different parts across the Lothians kind of work together, and especially the way there are a lot of people who will live in East Lothian or Mid Lothian and commute in. And actually, we don't really have the ability to have joined up thinking around transport planning, infrastructure, in order to actually service the way that people are using this city and living across the wider region.
Yeah, and you know, bodies like Cllr try and exist and do a good job, but they've not got funding to really to deliver much. City region deals been good, but it's, you know,
it's actually quite narrow, and frankly, I think there's an oversight. I'm not sure it's as loaded with democracy as I would like, put it that way.
And a big opportunity for Edinburgh just now, and you know, and this isn't a political point, is Fiona Hislop becoming transport lead in the Scottish Government, because she's got constituents out in West Lothian. She understands, certainly from that side of the city, some of the transport tensions her constituents try to come into the city for work, you know, or leisure. So I'm due to meet her next month, actually, so hope to discuss exactly that, discuss how we build the regional transport piece in terms of public transport. So hopefully there'll be some shared understanding there, and we can take that forward. But you know, but coming back to the funding situation, there's that real tension between the underfunding of the council and then the money we get that's ring-fenced for projects. So people can always feel that money could be better spent, but the reality is we can only spend it on, you know, these walking and cycling projects.
Yeah.
As important as they are, you know.
No, I quite agree. Well, look, we probably better leave it there, and maybe this is the start of something. I think there's a thing on Netflix which is comedians getting coffee in cars. Maybe this is councillors having chats on cycles. I don't know what the alliteration is there, but anyway, look, I really enjoyed this chat. I think it'd be good just to keep having this dialogue with everyone that's got an interest with the Quiet Route and the other transport plans. So yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
I mean, Edinburgh's transport problems are there, and there's going to be a lot of work in the coming years to deal with them, particularly the congestion piece, you know, and also reducing emissions.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely,
Good.
Okay.